Well, Jen, thanks so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we're glad to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
For sure, yeah. So tell us right now, in your current position, what do you see as the biggest issues facing our area right now?
Yeah, what I am hearing again and again from folks is the concerns about housing, concerns about costs, and concerns about childcare and how to, just making sure that our working families are taken care of and that our retirees are taken care of.
Sure. Why don't we go through those one at a time here?
Okay.
So let's start with housing, because I know that was an issue for me when I moved up here,
Yes.
and I'm sure for a lot of other people as well. So
Right.
how are we going to tackle, getting the amount of housing that we need and making it affordable?
Right. So the first step is that we're the state has provided funding to look at this on a regional scale across multiple counties. This is a problem that's bigger than any one community, and we need to have the resources at that level. And so having a regional coordinator to help support our communities and our builders is the first step. And then we are also looking at programs to make it easier to get that down payment by providing down payment assistance. There's already a $10,000 program and $10,000 extra for down payment, and the Vice President Harris is proposing $25,000 to really help people, and that doesn't get paid off until you've sold the home. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't cause the house costs to go up. It really does help support just bringing the cost down. And then there's the state granted $10 million to Invest UP so that they could help builders with bringing down their costs as well.
Mm-hmm. And that was.
And then I don't want to leave out the renters, because of course that's, I came here first as a renter, and the costs have gone up remarkably because we've been found since COVID, and a lot of folks really want to be here. And so changing the zoning to allow for more apartments to be let, and to make it easier for renters to also afford those costs.
Sure, and you mentioned the policy that Kamala Harris is proposing to provide that assistance with first-time home buyers. So the other side of the argument from the other side would be that is going to raise housing prices. So what's the response there?
Right, but because you don't have to pay that money back until you sell the home, mm-hmm. that could happen 30, 40 years, it could happen in 5 years. So the market can't time it. Like it's very much a grant around supporting the down payment. Mm-hmm. So it's not going to, it was designed to not cause those prices to go up because the market doesn't know when they're going to get the money back. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Understood. Let's move on to another topic as well, childcare, that I know you really wanted to talk about today. Yeah. What's the state of it in our area, and what are the ways we can?
Yeah, unfortunately, we've had a couple of childcares close that were serving, I believe 50 kids each. And what we've been able to replace it with, we have programs. There's two things. One is called TriShare, where the employer, the state of Michigan, and the parent each pay 1/3 of the cost, and they're bringing down the cost for working families, and also giving it's guaranteed funding to the provider, because part of the problem is that we don't have enough money we're not paying our workers enough, and so there's not enough workers. So it's really a knotted up problem. And so the other thing that we're doing is making it easier to start home daycares, mm-hmm. which only serve maybe 5 or 10 instead of that 50. But as we add those in all across the region, that will also help increase the number of slots available.
Sure, and how do we go about doing that?
Yeah, so the Lake Superior Community Partnership, which is Marquette's Economic Development Agency, Marquette County's Economic Development Agency, has a program where if you're interested in starting a home daycare, you enroll in their program. They give you training, they give you funding supports to get the permits, they help with getting all of the certifications done for your home so that it has very low costs to get you started, and ongoing support as any problems or issues that may come up. Mm-hmm. So it's building, and I know that they've it added at least 5 home daycares, which is another 30 or 40 slots at least.
For sure. Okay, and let's also talk about another important issue for you, abortion rights.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the biggest topics in the country right now, and I'm
Yeah.
sure voters everywhere, this is where they see or where they want to see exactly where their candidates stand on this issue. So what can you tell us about your mindset when it comes to this?
Yeah,
controversial issue?
these are medical decisions about that each individual has the right to make for themselves. The government does not belong in the doctor's office, and each person has a right to decide what they're going to have to do about their health, their family's health. And I've heard some really sad stories where unexpected complications come up and surgeries required, and it's a tough situation, and I do not belong in your doctor's office, and that's essentially, you're giving me that power, and I do not want it. Instead, we respect the people who are making the decisions for their health and their family's health. And I think we passed a referendum. It passed in the district, Prop 3, and in 2022, and then we have codified the Reproductive Health Act for Michigan so that the provisions of Roe v. Wade, which were law for 50 years, are the law of Michigan.
And a lot of people say, yes, we shouldn't be in the doctor's office making these decisions for the families. And then, as I said earlier, playing on the other side, their response is, well, this is, a child that we're talking about. What's your response to, the people that believe that this is a human life and that no one should have the right to terminate it?
When you say that there's no exceptions for rape and incest, you are asking someone who's been traumatized to, I think that's horrific, and that's not right. And then the life of the mother, we have seen women have now died in Georgia, and that's been documented, where because the medical professionals felt they would be arrested if they did not provide medical care, a woman literally died in their parking lot. And that is also morally unconscionable. If you think that that's a life, you've now lost 2 lives. And so the medical care that can make sure, and another thing that happens is women have to suffer through complications that cause a lot of problems. And then rather than getting medical care, they have to wait, and then they're not able to ever have children again. If they had been taken care of and had the proper procedures, they would be able to have another child. So it's this there's been a long understanding about what abortion meant, but we've really, if you talk to women who have had to endure these situations, we need to let them and their doctors decide so that they can go on to have children should they want to do that.
All right, and let's move on to the My Healthy Climate Initiative that was recently signed by Governor Whitmer, a bill that you supported as well. Also giving with the goal, let me make sure I get the facts right here, 100% renewable energy by 2040.
Right.
Do you see that as a realistic goal?
Well, that goal was set because it's part of a treaty that the United States signed with the rest of the world, the Paris Climate Treaty. And all the nations in the world but 2 have signed that treaty to say that we are moving in that direction because climate change is a threat to all of us on the planet. And the provisions of our bill in Michigan are 2-year planning timeframes. So there's what happens between now and 2020, I believe it's 26, 28, 30, and then 35 and 40. So because the technology is changing so rapidly and the costs are shifting about how much it costs to generate electricity, how much it costs to move energy around. Every time a coal boat came in to Market Harbor to provide coal for the Shiras power plant, for example, $1 million left our community in that coal, having to pay for the boat, pay for the train to get it here, going back to Wyoming to dig it out of the ground. And so with solar and wind and batteries, which are rapidly getting better and better, we're going to be able to, but it's a transition. Mm-hmm. It's not that one thing gets turned off and one thing gets turned on. It's that we're going to use more of one and maybe a little less of the other, and it's going to go back and forth we're going to have both operating and running as we figure out how to do these things in ways that make sense in our local conditions. And I know people say, well, it'll never work up here. Well, UPCO, which serves 15,000 people in the UP, had a cap on the number of solar users it would allow. That was initially 1%. Well, that 1% cap was met in 2017, so then they doubled it to 2%. That cap has been met. We've now raised the cap on the law to 10%. People are putting solar panels up on their house because it actually is cost effective. And you don't have to go off the grid. We can have it be supported. But yeah, it's a change, it's a transition. But the other reason we passed that law is Michigan is pulling down more money than any other state. $500 million, $500 million is coming to Michigan to support this transition. Mm-hmm. So it's the government, the private sector, and last point, the nickel mine that we have and the nickel mines that are coming have markets because of this energy transition. So there are multiple benefits to the Upper Peninsula around cost, around having new kinds of energy, and then there's the economic drivers of the mining that's going to be possible because of this transition.
Sure, and I think where a lot of the controversy came from with this bill, Jen, was the fact that it gives the Michigan Public Service Commission the authority to override local governments to, enact these big energy projects. So what are your thoughts on that, and what do you say to the local municipalities who say we don't want that, and now they don't have a choice?
To be perfectly clear on how this works. A gas pipeline has eminent domain. Mm-hmm. That means that the Public Service Commission can come in and say that gas pipeline shall happen and it shall follow this line and you must give up the property. That is not the case. It is written into the energy law that it is not allowed under eminent domain. Mm-hmm. So they cannot override. What they can do is for the very largest projects, and only the very largest projects, over 50 megawatts and 100 megawatts, 50 megawatts of wind and 100 megawatts of solar, then they can help decide what happens. But it is a step-by-step process, and the local unit of government always has the opportunity to work with the developer. The developer can say, I want to go to the Public Service Commission, but then they have to pay money to the local unit to cover the cost of going to the Public Service Commission. So, and finally, it's not, if it meets this box, and this box, you're automatically granted. It's a quasi-judicial process where there is, arguments are made for the pros and cons, and it's not automatic. Mm-hmm. So I know that the word has been spread that is the case, but that is not, in fact, how it's going to work. And I also can share that in the House District 109, there are 3 100 megawatt solar projects coming that were all developed before this law came. Mm-hmm. And in those cases, the communities are going to get millions of dollars of tax benefits, and we're going to have the security of knowing that energy is being generated right here in the Upper Peninsula. And if something should happen to a pipeline, we don't have to worry about whether or not the energy is going to be here. Mm-hmm.
And so how do we pay? So we want to reach those goals by 100% renewable by 2040. How are we going to pay for all that?
Yeah, so like I said, there is a lot of federal money that's coming in to support the development of these projects. And so I'm struggling because I don't want to get too technical, but basically what happens is the developer the other thing that this starts with a private landowner. This is a legal contract between a private landowner and someone who is in the business of building renewable energy projects, solar, wind, or batteries. So a private property owner has the right to enter legal contracts. That's where it starts. And then it meets the zoning code of a community, and the zoning code of the community says how solar shall be shaped on the land. And then the developer puts up the money to build them, and then they sell it to the utility. Mm-hmm. And then there's money that goes, the taxes go back to the community, that the fees that go back to the landowner. And then the sale of the energy is handled by the utility, and then the utility is managing those costs. And utilities develop what's called an integrated resource plan, IRP. Mm-hmm. And those are developed over a multi-year time frame, and they are planning always, like I said, there's always plans in this world, and because these are big capital projects. And so over time, they are allocating those costs. And there's a regulatory process to decide how those costs are going to be allocated. So it's spread out over time. Mm-hmm. There's funding available to support it on your own private house. You can get thousands of dollars of tax credits from the US government. And there is the allocation of costs over time by the utility. So that's how it gets paid for. And again, they aren't designed to turn one thing off and turn another on. Mm. Instead, they come in gradually over time, and we start using one more than the other.
Sure. And let's move on to another big topic as well, gun rights. You are a Democrat, and lots of Republican voters, that worries them because of, a lot of other Democrats' stance on gun rights. Where do you stand on gun rights?
Well,
yourself?
I want to point out that Democrats have never taken anyone's guns away that I'm aware of, mm-hmm. unless they were engaged in criminal activity. Mm-hmm. So what we passed so I just want to be clear that I don't think this is a partisan issue, mm-hmm. because the issue is really gun violence. And unfortunately, in our region, suicide by gun is one of the leading causes of death of our children. Mm. And it's terrible. Mm-hmm. And so the laws that were passed in Michigan in 2023 are to help people at their most vulnerable moment, where they're thinking of doing harm to themselves or to someone else. And so that's what the extreme risk protection orders is a way to help people who, and a medical professional or a public safety officer can say these people are a threat to themselves or others. There's a process like if someone's a domestic abuser and they are hurting their loved ones or causing harm, there's a process to get a personal protection order. It's very similar to that. And then the question of gun locks is one where, we saw where a young man, shot up a high school with a weapon given to him when he clearly had mental health issues. Mm-hmm. So the holding the adults responsible for children's behavior, when it's the owner of the gun that's responsible, and folks will say, well, yes, absolutely, there's lots of many responsible gun owners. People know how to handle firearms, especially in the Upper Peninsula. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, that is not the case everywhere, and there was no law to hold those people. We have to hold adults accountable. Mm.
And so to be clear, you wouldn't be in favor of banning any sort of weapons or
that has not come up, and banning weapons is at a state level doesn't make any sense because it's things cross borders, and I can't speak to federal issues.
Sure.
That's not something I try to work really hard on what I can put my hands on, and what I am working on is, for example, on the suicide question. Mm-hmm. I made sure that there's money for what's called 6 Feet Over. It's a nonprofit organization that helps families deal with the aftermath of suicide, which can be very traumatic. having to clean up what happens afterwards is a very traumatic experience. And so this organization steps in and helps people with those moments.
Well, that sounds like a great organization there. In closing, Jen, let's talk a little bit about your opponent right now. What do you think sets you apart from Carl Bonet?
Well, I have 30 years experience in making my community better. I have worked in supporting public health on addressing childhood obesity, addressing keeping our water clean, transportation issues, infrastructure issues. So I'm bringing a vast wealth of knowledge of years of experience and relationships all across Michigan so that I can be a really strong advocate for the Upper Peninsula and what we need, and making sure that the dollars and resources are coming back to us.
All right, sounds good. Jen, thank you so much for coming on with us today.
Thank you very much. Those were great questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right.